Hey everybody, it's Lou Santiago, and we have got a fantastic show for you tonight. We have got the man, the myth, the legend, Butch Patrick. Sorry about that, I bobbled. But let me tell you guys before we get into who Butch Patrick is. These are some of the shows that he has been on. The Real McCoys, Death Valley, My Favorite Martian, Bonanza, Rawhide, Mr. Ed, A Horse is a Horse, Gunsmoke, I Dream of Jeannie, The Monkees, Family Affair, Marcus Welby, MD, My Three Sons. We're talking about the guy who played Eddie Munster, but that's not all. We're not just going to talk about the Munsters. I know that's what you guys are thinking. Butch is a car guy, and John actually met him at the race in Jersey on Dead Man's Curve. So we're going to take a break. We're going to get into it because Butch's time is tight, so we want to get going. Let's go.
Yo,
John,
what's happening?
What's
First,
happening,
I gotta
man?
show you. Gotta show you. Check
Dude,
it
that's
out.
so awesome.
Right?
Did you get me one?
Hey, look.
Did you get me
crap.
one?
Nah,
Did you get me one?
Nah, fuck you.
Fucking fag.
Yo, do I have a Garage Insider shirt? Nah, I got one of those. You don't get one of those.
I'm going to send you one. How about that?
All right, that's cool. Talk to Butch. I'm sure we could arrange something.
So do you see, I had to cut the ceiling out of the room. I had to cut the ceiling out.
The vents.
Yeah, I'm getting the ducting done. They came in yesterday and measured everything up. So it's just going to be insane. Everything's on back order till November.
Easily.
Yeah.
Everything is
it's all from
Everything's
China.
imported. It's imported from China. Yeah.
China.
Listen, we got Butch for 30.
Yeah, let's get going.
Let's bring them out because we got a lot of ground to cover. Like you said, and that's a lot of shows, and they're all big ticket, big shows.
There he is.
There he is.
Butch, how you doing, man?
Hey, Butch.
If he could be Luckin' Foo, I want to be Batch Patrick.
We can go and change it. We can change it up on you.
You like the Luckin' Foo, don't you?
Batch Patrick. We can do that.
There you go. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Do it. Make it yours. Take it. So, but I got to be, now let me tell you how this works, all right? Because I'm sure you don't know. John is the one who likes to keep to some kind of order as to where I just run all willy-nilly, okay? So the biggest question I got for you is, I know you used to hang out at George Barris's shop when you were doing the shows. Was that the event that made you become a car guy? That's what I want to know.
Well, it certainly didn't hurt. I'll tell you that. But as a kid,
right
about the time I started doing the Munsters, I got my first mini bike and the go-kart, and then the Hodaka 90, and then that led up to the street bikes and the Mach 1. So I was already on that path. But being around George, I was lucky enough to really see the custom side of the Mercs and all the cool rides that he had been instrumental in doing. And then the TV cars and the movie cars came along after that. But the main thing about George, he allowed a little kid, me, a little boy, to come to his shop and poke around and see some interesting stuff and really fall in love and learn a lot.
Yeah.
Look, think awesome, about man. That. Think about that for a second. The time
I am
of Butch being on TV, all those top shows, because every one that you listed is huge. I mean, it's huge. Then he's with the legend George Barris.
Yeah.
How cool! Oh, yeah,
and we met a couple other. What other legends did you meet?
Well, the list on that thing was really cool. The Monkees Christmas show was one of my favorites. A 14-year-old kid, the Monkees were huge, and I got to work with them for a whole week as an equal, which was really wonderful. But the My Three Sons connection was one of my favorites because my agent Mary Grady, her son was Don Grady, who obviously played Robbie, and I was always Ernie's best friend. But I did 9 episodes, which was the most of any male guest star during the entire run of the show. So I felt very honored.
Wow.
On there a lot. And I always was Ernie's best friend. And it was fun. It was like I was they called me part of the tribe when they got their LA at My Three Sons Day. I attended, they invited me out. I was very honored. But one of the things
that's cool.
One of the things you didn't mention was I was lucky enough to work on the only feature film Chuck Jones did called The Phantom Toll Booth. And as a kid watching my favorite cartoons, Warner Brothers cartoons, all the great voiceover artists, Mel Blanc, let me see, June Foray, Hans Conried, Dawes Butler, they all worked for Chuck in that movie. So I actually had a chance to work for a few years with them as well, which was really a big deal to me as a kid, seeing the voiceover greats up close and working with them side by side.
Yeah, see, I think that's cool, man. See, John didn't put that in there when he did the write-up. It's because John was slacking, obviously.
And you have some pictures from Lidsville and stuff, and there's a couple of Adam 12s tossed in there. But I worked for about 15 years in the business, and I did quite a bit of work. I was pretty happy.
Let's back up, Butch. Back up to the beginning. How did you get into the business? What was life like? I mean, part of me is like, man, it's fantastic. The other part is, I mean, you missed your childhood. Did you not? I mean, you're working as an adult.
Well, it's when people say you missed your childhood, you're a child, so you're having a childhood. It was just an unusual childhood, but it was still a childhood nonetheless.
Right.
I played Little League.
Right.
I just spent a lot of time at the studios, but I also spent a lot of time back in public school, and I lived about 25 miles away, south of LA, down in the Beach District. So I had totally regular friends with regular stuff and went out and did regular things. And then I would occasionally run up to Hollywood and go behind the studio gates and do some work, which to me was a savings account that I was planning on using on buying a race car, because all I ever wanted to be as a kid was a race car driver. Some kids wanted to be an astronaut, fireman, but I wanted to be a race car driver. And that's funny because we'll get into the car thing, how that led me down a different path. And then also one of the things that I was really, really blessed with at the time I was doing the Munsters was my mom had married a baseball player who was with the LA Angels at the time, before they were the California Angels. And he had come in from the Yankee organization. His name was Ken Hunt. And so when I wasn't working and I had free time and the baseball season was going on, I got to go out and shag flies with all the major league players in the American League for a few years, which was, to me, was even better than going to the studio.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. I could see that. That's cool.
That had to be surreal. I mean,
I was blessed. No, I had a wonderful, I couldn't ask for a better childhood. I really couldn't. It was the best.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful time. I met some great people, had some wonderful experiences. And like any kid, you don't appreciate it at the time as much as you should have.
So I read that you first did a Kellogg's commercial. Is that right? That's one of the first things you did?
What happened is that when I was in the second grade, my little sister was very, very pretty and photogenic, and they thought that it would be nice to possibly get her into some print modeling for her father to be influential, that would then endorse this gentleman that wanted to be mayor of the city of Gardena. The plan was to use Michelle to get Dave to endorse this guy to be mayor. So that was the plan. I went along for the ride during the photo shoot. And when the gentleman named Amos Carr, who was the #1 child photographer in Hollywood, was done, he looked over and he says, "I like that kid's look. Do you mind if I slap this little hat on him and have him do a pose for me?" And I did. My mom said it was okay. And he took that picture and he put it in the window of his studio on Hollywood Boulevard. And lo and behold, a few weeks later, a producer and a director were walking down the street, saw the picture, happened to be in the middle of casting a movie and still looking for the youngest son of Eddie Albert and Jane Wyatt and Brenda Lee's little brother. And they sought me out and they requested my presence at 20th Century Fox. I went up. I told them I had never had any experience. And they said, well, you got to start somewhere. And they hired me for a movie that lasted 6 weeks, which during that 6-week period, I got that Kellogg's commercial. And then right after that, I got General Hospital. So within a very short period of time, I accidentally wound up into Hollywood and with a bunch of credits, and I never really looked back.
That's pretty good stretch.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was just accidental.
Crazy, man.
Well, my mom asked me, "Would you like to do this movie?" And I go, "Well, what's in it? What's in it for me?" She goes, "You don't have to go back to you don't have to go back to public school." I went, "Okay." And you make money for your
really. Don't tempt any kid with not having to go to school. Yeah, it's crazy.
And she bribed me with letting me build it. I had this incredibly large slot car track that ran all through the house. That was my one perk that I got. Every Wednesday, I would go visit George in his shop and go to the hobby store and pick up a couple pieces of the track and whatever I needed to build a slot car. So that was my Wednesday treat.
That's awesome.
Cool. So after the movie, where did you go from there? How do you go from that to the Munsters to your roster of TV shows. What's that like?
Mary Grady, the woman who was my only agent I ever had just opened up an all-children's agency. It became quite a powerhouse agency in Hollywood. At the time, her only client was her son, Don Grady, who had actually been hired when she was working for an adult agency. So I was one of, if not her first, I was one of her first clients that actually got some credits. And then she went on to handle Aaron Moran and Johnny Whitaker, and her list of people is very, very extensive. But I'd like to think that I was one of her first maybe paying clients. And we became friends, and I actually lived at her house when my mom was back east living with my father, the baseball player, got traded to the Washington Senators. So the whole family went east, and I was left out on the West Coast working. And I moved in with Mary, and she let me live with her. We were very close. So one thing led to another, and then after that, I just kept going on to interviews. And the more I would go out for interviews, the more work I would get, and it came pretty easily to me. I never took an acting lesson, and I just looked at it as a hobby. It didn't, I was never affected by it. Like I said, I had another life outside of Hollywood. Back then, it wasn't quite like it is today, where you get into the publicity machine and you have publicists and you're doing talk shows and you're going to this and you're going to that. I was pretty much isolated out, being myself, and then I would go in and go to work, and that would be about the extent of it.
Yeah. That's wild.
So you skipped over. I mean, you told it pretty quick about the Monkees Christmas.
Oh yeah.
Tell us about that, because I saw an interview or a piece where you talked about it extensively, and it seemed like it was pretty important to you. I mean, just working with the Monkees is huge.
What happened was the Beatles had come to the set. I missed meeting the Beatles that day. And you're a 11-year-old kid back then, and the Beatles came to America. We came out in 64. They came over in 64. But when I did the Monkees episode, it was the end of 67. I think it aired right at the beginning of 68. So I was 13 years old, they were huge. They had a TV show. Their music was big. They were as big as the Beatles in America. They were really top notch. So I normally would never tell anybody in school when I got a part. It was very much my private world, and I kept it out of out of anybody's crosshairs. When I got the interview and I got hired for the Monkees, everybody in the 8th grade knew about it. Everybody, because I was so proud of myself that I pulled this off. Normally I give it my best shot. I go home. If I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. This one I really wanted. I really wanted it bad. And when I wound up doing it, then the idea of the script was I was working as an equal with them because they were hired to babysit me. So I was in almost every scene with them. And it wasn't like, you just walk in, you have one scene, and you go home. I was there for 3 days working long hours with these guys, and I was just happy as could be. They were all very, very nice. I'm still friends with Mickey. I was friends with Davey and Peter. Mike I met, but he was kind of like the one that went another direction. But it was a really great time. And honestly, I think it's the best episode they ever did as well. Not because I'm in it, just the way the structure of the show, that they sang at the end a cappella, and then they broke down the fourth wall and invited all the people that made the show a success on camera. And how they showed that and the enthusiasm, it literally mirrored exactly what it was like to be around those guys. There was just a fun, happy set with a bunch of great guys having a great time in 1968.
That's cool. Shit. I remember watching the Monkees. I remember the Monkees. Yeah. I remember it too. Good.
I mean, it was pretty cool when you think about you got the Munsters, you got the Munsters cars, the Coach, Dragula.
Yeah.
Then right after that, George is doing the Batmobile 66 or so.
Yeah.
Then he's got the Munstermobile.
Munster.
I mean, you think about that time frame and the artwork and how things you couldn't do that again in a 5 or 8 year period now. It's pretty crazy. And the popularity. I mean, granted, back then there was only 3 channels, and you could switch over to UHF and all that down the road. But I mean, that was a big deal. I'm sure the people that watched the Munsters was probably, how many? Was it 15, 20 million? Butch, do you know? On any given time?
We had I don't remember the market share, but there was only 3 channels in most of the country. In the Midwest, prime time started at 6:30. We were the 7:30 East Coast, West Coast, 6:30 leadoff show on Thursday night. What people don't realize these kids don't realize is back in the old days, the TV guide was the entertainment Bible for the household during the week. Weekends, not so much. People would go out, they go to movies, they would have other things to do. But during the week, Monday through Friday, the TV guide was gospel, and the Munsters was a very popular show. And it was family, it was funny, but it was well produced. And it had this interesting blend of the Leave It to Beaver scripts from the producers of Leave It to Beaver with the Universal Monster sets and the Car 54 cast of Fred Gwynn and Al Lewis with the movie star quality of Yvonne DiCarlo. And they mushed it all in with this beautiful blonde that thought she was unfortunate and homely. And you had this crazy script that on paper you wouldn't think it would be so good, but it just it hit gold because people, they loved the chemistry of the family unit. They really enjoyed they were entertained. They thought the stories were great, and it became a huge hit. And it was a one-of-a-kind, one-off show that's never been done since in 57 years.
Yeah.
So you were doing, it was only 2 years, the Munsters, 35. So it's 70 shows total. That's jam-packed. That's a lot of work in a short period of time. What was your day like?
The first year we actually did 39. And then the second year when they backed it off to 31, they kind of knew it was going to be going off the air, and Fred's health was getting a little thin. Literally, he was a tall, skinny guy to begin with. But what they decided to do is, in lieu of the last 8 episodes, is they made a movie, the Munster Go Home movie. So they filled that.
I remember that.
Yeah, and they also made it in color. And the idea was behind it, they were thinking syndication was coming around the corner, and they decided they needed a movie to introduce the Munsters to the rest of the world, to then be able to sell the Munsters TV show as a package. So they used the movie as calling card, so to speak.
I got you.
So how many hours a day were you? I mean, you had to put in a lot of time as a kid, did you not?
Well, you're only allowed to work like 8 hours a day. So you got 8 hours of work and 1 hour of lunch. So I would get there at 8. I'd be in makeup from 8 to 9. I usually would hit school from about 9 to 11 if possible. And then they would do a little filming before lunch, go to lunch for an hour, come back, get that other hour of school in somehow. Then you'd have an hour of recreation, whether it was 2 half-hour breaks or 1 hour, and then they would have another 2 or 3 hours of filming. But the key to me was I had 2 extra hours on each end because I had an hour drive to work and an hour drive home at the end of the day. But in the summertime, if you ever see an episode where Eddie is featured and he's in a lot of scenes, that was done in summer when they had an extra 3 hours that they didn't have to apply to school. They would apply that to camera time. So they would write scripts that would load up Eddie. So whenever all the kids were on summer vacation, that's when I was working in more.
Yeah.
Albert, no, I had a crush on Beverly Owen, the first Marilyn.
The other one.
Oh, that's right. There was 2 Marilyns. I forgot that.
Ken, do you have that one or no?
Do I have the?
No, I mean Ken. Ken was pulling up the pictures.
Oh yeah,
Ken behind the scenes.
I had a crush. I had a crush on Yvonne DiCarlo. That's who I had my crush on. Yeah, I had my crush on her. Yeah.
There was a lot of interesting things that went in. If you watch the Munsters, it's funny why it's so popular this day. Number one, the production value was very strong. It was shot on film. We used the sets from the original Frankenstein. We had great sets. We had very funny guest stars early in their comedic careers, big stars, Paul Lynde, Don Rickles, Frank Gorshin, Harvey Korman, Richard Deacon. I mean, there's a very extensive list of quality.
Wow.
Jane Withers. We had a lot of people come through the show, and we had some very, very funny world-class episodes. The George Barris Cars, music. If you listen to the soundtrack, we had a killer soundtrack. It was really, really well produced. And I think that's what really keeps the show, the viewership there, that it was a fun show for the obvious reasons, but the quality and the production value makes it legendary.
Yeah. Yeah. It's timeless. It really is, because you could find episodes on YouTube, I'm sure, and someone posted up in the comments that the episode with you and the monkeys is on YouTube too.
Yeah, YouTube.
So it's definitely floating around.
Yeah, YouTube has been a phenomenon in its own right. I'm actually developing a couple of YouTube channels myself. Everybody is. It's not like this, but at least with YouTube, you literally can do what networks were doing 50, 60 years ago individually.
Yeah.
And, you can pretty much create stuff. Technology's there. The fans are there. There's a lot of people that have never, ever turned on a TV set. They've gotten everything through the internet.
Yeah.
That's one of the few shots there without the widow's peak.
Yeah. That was what happened there. There was only one scene done with that scene without the widow's peak. And that was the scene where we all had the love potion, and I'm running home from school with all the girls chasing me. And as I run in the gate, that I don't have a widow's peak, and they stopped production. And they go, he's not believable as the offspring of Herman and Lily. We need to make him more Munstery. Mike Westmore took me up to the lab. He created some eyebrows for me, and he came up with a widow's peak. And then we went back and started shooting again. And that's the Eddie. That's a very rare non-widow's peak press shot.
I read that another kid did the pilot, but it wasn't you. What's the story behind that? Is it true?
Yeah, there was two. It was a different mom and there was a different kid. Lily's name was Phoebe. Herman's wife's name was Phoebe, and her name was Joan Marshall. She had very long, straight black hair, very similar to Morticia Adams. And the fact that Happy Durman was playing the role really angry. You know, he was probably taking direction. He was probably doing the best that the director told him to do. But he's growling and snarling, and and they decided that they thought that the rest of the family was very normal, and I think they wanted the kid to be a normal kid as well, looking different but still normal. And then Carlo had star power, so she was offered the role, and they thought that it was a bad choice, Fred and Al, but she turned out to be a great choice because she did comedy really well, and she was a big name.
Yeah. Do you have any crazy Munster on set stories that we wouldn't know about that you remember?
Not, something, not really. And I'm sure some stuff happened, but the stuff that would be worth repeating, it probably happened while I was in school. Number one, I wasn't privy to it. I mean, the one thing happened that I remember when Fred Gwynne drove the car off the set onto Lancashire Boulevard down to Cahuenga and made a little joyride and, unauthorized, and came back about 20 minutes later as the sun was setting, because the idea was they told him, don't do this. And you tell Fred not to do something, you're just asking for trouble. So they told him to turn around and come right back. And he drove out the front gate of Universal. Now, the funny thing is the car is really not that dependable. And we don't know how much gas is in it. And it doesn't have tail lights. And things could have gone wrong. But we made it down and we made a U-turn. We came back about 10 minutes later. And of course, everybody's still standing around waiting for us to return, which we did. And it worked out pretty well.
Can you imagine seeing that? Can you imagine being checking that out?
So awesome. Yeah.
You're on your phone, swipe left, swipe right. Kevin Water. I don't know what that means.
I don't know. Oh, they can. It's probably to that. Someone wants to turn up the Facebook, captions on Facebook.
Okay.
Riding into Munsters coach is a blast.
Lois is the administrator of my fan group, all 28,000 members.
Lois. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, what car do you own? Any cars?
Yeah, I have a Munster coach, and I bought a Munster coach and a Dragula, not obviously a George Barris one, but a gentleman named Rucker Posey built a couple that I became friends with, and I wound up buying his setup. And then I'm building a more accurate Dragula with a small block Ford and a 500 horse Jegs stroker motor, which will be done at the end of the year. And then my coach is under contract, and I'm building another Munster coach. So when I hand the keys over next October, I'll have a replacement coach with the small block Ford, will be more accurate. But when I had a chance to buy the cars, I immediately knew I was onto something really, really good, because I knew that I could take these cars and my love of the fans, instead of just going to Comic-Cons and trotting in with a briefcase full of autographed pictures. I could now have a 34-foot trailer with 2 cars, tour the country, do automotive events, become an event status situation. And one of the best things that ever happened was I was the first truck and car into the Superdome. And I pulled in and I got out and I looked around. I go, man, I've arrived when you're the first thing into the Superdome. That's
wild.
Because you need the most space. I was like a kid in a candy store. I got to cut the ribbon at the Woodward Dream Cruise a few years ago. The first car of 400,000 cars down the road. So I really, really like it because, John Schneider's got a General Lee and he does his thing, but Batman didn't ride around in a Batmobile, and it's to have the Munster coach and be Eddie Munster and be able to go out and talk to promoters and cities and clients and do stuff. It's really a cool fit.
Yeah.
And it allows me to travel, which is what my podcast and my YouTube channel is all about. It's called Coach to Coast with K, and it's very much like Charles Kuralt used to do in the 70s. His traveling around America and loving Americana, and that's what I do.
Dude, that's cool. That's real cool.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
after you're on the Munsters,
Yeah,
and you start to do other shows, how do you? I mean, I guess you just auditioned. You got those jobs.
yeah.
Is Monkeys Christmas your favorite? Talk to us about that time frame. What was life like?
I like that because of the Monkeys, but after the, some of my favorite shows happened after I was 16. You know, I remember Marcus Welby was cool, and that was right when they landed on the moon. That was a big day, and Robert Young let us stop work and watch the moon landing. We had cameras all over. They landed in the afternoon. They didn't really walk on it until about 11 o'clock that night. So we saw the landing about 4 in the afternoon, and I thought that was so cool that he shut down production and let everybody enjoy that. I remember when I was working when Kennedy got shot. It was a horrible day, and the director said, "Oh, come on, everybody back to work." You know, he was a real dick about it. You know, so
Yeah.
working, it's fun to be. You know, you have good sets and bad sets. I've been very blessed. 99% of the time, I was on a good set. The Munsters probably being the best. Lidsville was an interesting situation there because it was a very modern chroma key set. We had voices from people off screen. We had a director on another soundstage directing us through a God mic. You wouldn't have any personal contact with him. It was all done like Big Brother. Charles Nelson Riley was a handful. But the good news about it is that hat people, most of them, I knew the little people in those hats because they were my stand-ins at one time or another as I was growing up. In Hollywood, they would never use another kid to stand in for another kid. You always had little people. So several of the little people were friends of mine, and that made it fun.
Yeah, because you went in there knowing somebody. Yeah,
and I made good friends with Sharon Baird was Raunchy Rabbit, and let me see, we had Billy Hayes, who was legendary as Witchy Poo and Weenie Jeannie, and she did Mammy Yoakum on Broadway. And at the time, I'm a 17-year-old kid turning 18 doing a kids show. I wasn't the happiest camper, but they paid me handsomely, and I knew that it would come in handy for my funny car that I was about to buy and go drag racing.
Awesome. Yeah.
Did
you get the funny car?
We had a little problem with that. What happened was I got number 41 in the last year of the Vietnam lottery, and I thought I was going to Vietnam, so I decided to spend all my money before I got killed. And then I didn't go to Vietnam because I had a bad knee that I wasn't aware of. So at my induction examination, they said, "Oh man, you got a bad knee. Call us in 6 months. We're classifying you 1H, not fit for duty." 6 months went by. I didn't remind them to call me, and I never heard from them again. So there went the funny car.
Yeah. That's
Butch,
why.
Forgive my ignorance. Have you written a book about your life? And are you going to?
I will eventually. I have a really good Munsters book. There was a book written about 15 years ago that was sort of a biography, but it wasn't as accurate as I would have liked it. People enjoyed it. At the time, I wasn't quite myself that I am today. I was still in my disease and partying and drinking too much. So people that know me, I'm going to have 11 years sober here in November. So I want to do the book now, maybe next year, because I have a whole different look and my life is much different than it was 15 years ago.
Yeah. I got you. That makes sense. You might as well, you do it while you have a clear mind.
Clear mind. I'm a cancer survivor. I do things differently now. I'm in a much different place, but it's great to know you're here now, so you can, because I was out partying for 41 years. I started in 1969 and I didn't stop, until 2010. So that's a hell of a run. But
that's a hell of a run.
But it wasn't abnormal. Everybody in Hollywood was partying. It was what people did. It was the 60s and the 70s. And it's true. It's hard to explain that when bad behavior was acceptable and nobody ever said no to anybody, and nobody ever told Elvis no, nobody ever told Michael Jackson no. I'm not equating myself to that. I'm just saying the lifestyle was acceptable, and everybody wanted to be fun. And for me, being at the beach, I wanted to be accepted by my friends, and the way I did that was throwing the best parties and always having a bag of weed and a bunch of beer in the fridge, and things went on from there.
Right. Yeah, I get it. It's crazy. When in Rome. That's all. When in Rome.
Yeah.
That's all there is to that.
It's funny. Some
Yeah.
of my best friends now are old rock and rollers and party guys that they got sober too. It's a very cool club to be part of. You'd be surprised how many people are sober. That we don't publicize it too much because I just mentioned it to you. But as you get it more into it, you find more and more very cool people that were big ass partiers who came out the other side okay. A lot of us didn't. A lot of us died.
Yeah, a lot didn't. Yeah. You're right. A lot did not.
What drove you to that point to where you sobered up? What was the event, or what made you go, okay, enough's enough, or whatever?
It snuck up on you. I knew I needed help probably 5 years before I actually dropped the rock and sought help. And I had a good friend that I used to party with. And I would contact him once in a while and ask him how he was doing and tippy-toe around the idea. And then finally, a friend of mine said, you need help. And I got a place that wants to sponsor you. And he wants to get a child actor sober. And his name was Jim Antonowicz. And he owned Oasis Treatment Center out in Anaheim, right next to Disneyland. He was the original interventionist for the A&E show Intervention. And he quit doing that show because they wanted him to get a sober intake client drunk for the cameras, and he wouldn't do it. He goes, no, they show
I don't blame him.
They show it sober, they're staying sober. So he parted ways with the A&E network, but he always wanted to get a child actor sober so they could help other people. And he and we opened up the Yellow Pages. Oasis jumped off the page. They called. The woman answered the phone. They put my people in touch with Jim, and they flew me out there. And he waived my fee, which would have been like $35,000. And I gave it a shot. And like every other addict, alcoholic, after a few weeks, I was ready to leave. And they kind of talk you back into, don't go anywhere. There was no locks on the doors. You could have walked away anytime you want. And I wound up staying 3 years. And in 3 years, the first 90 days, you get 9 months of treatment in 90 days because the 28-day thing doesn't work for anybody. And he knew it. And we became friends. And now I've reached millions of people. And his only prerequisite was he wanted someone that hadn't been on the rehab merry-go-round with multiple failures. And I had never been in a rehab. So his father, I'd never been in rehab. And I agreed to listen to him and do what he said to do. And it worked.
Wow.
Never had a relapse.
Wow.
That's pretty
That's
good.
Impressive, man.
Yeah, he says once in a while, a burning bush experience can happen to a spiritually awakened person, and that all desires to use and party are all just removed from your being. And that's what happened to me. I got very, very lucky.
Wow.
So I saw somewhere you did a movie, Sandlot General, in Brazil. And your sisters, I think, were quoted as saying that you left as Richie Cunningham, came back as John Lennon.
Yeah.
Is that a transition period? And what the hell happened?
Well,
what can you, to help people out there, what took place between?
Imagine this little window of opportunity. 1969. Okay. I watched the moon landing on, I think it was July 20th. August 2nd is my birthday. I get my Mach 1, 16 years old, brand new Mach 1. My girlfriend lives up at the top of Laurel Canyon, Woodrow Wilson Drive. Charlie Manson's out murdering people. It's a crazy summer. It's a really, really weird summer. A friend of mine has an interview to go up for this movie that's being done in Brazil. I drive him to the interview. As he comes out of the door, I'm waiting in the waiting room, and the producer goes, Butch Patrick. I go, yeah. He goes, you got a minute? I go, yeah. He hires me for the job that I drove my friend up for the interview. I wound up getting the job. 3 days later, I'm in Brazil. No teacher.
What a pal.
No parent, no teacher, no parent. All I got to do is show up for work at the lobby. We got a French camera crew. We got a Chinese caterer. We got Brazilian actors and crew. And for the next 3 months, I'm down there, and all I have to do is show up for work. So I'm partying at night. I make friends with the sailors who've got the Navy ships there. So I'm smuggling cigarettes off the ships. I'm exchanging currency for them. And I found a cab driver who sold me weed. So I got weed, pot, and cigarettes all going on the black market in Brazil while I'm doing a movie. And I come back, and I'm going out to the red light district with the French camera crew at night. I'm 16. I look about 12. And when I came back, that's when my sister said, he left as Richard Cunningham and he came back as John Lennon, because I was a different person, and I was off to the races in the party mode of late 1969, 1970 Hollywood. And that's how it was.
Wow.
I'm telling you, it would make a
That is
fantastic book if you write all. I mean, just the fact of the Manson, that summer, living through that.
It was the craziest time anybody could have ever imagined in that window, and yeah, it was great. I was very blessed. I had cool girls and girlfriends and fast cars and lived at the beach and surfing. And it was, like I say, it was a good time. Too good.
What'd you think of Brazil outside of all that you were doing? What'd you think of the country?
We went to Rio. We went up to Salvador. It was beautiful. I mean, it was a really interesting place. It was, kind of like definitely a culture shock. Very much of a culture shock.
Oh yeah.
But nice people, great music, good, batida, which is like cashew liqueur, and we also had some Brazilian stars, Adorable Caymmi. We had Guilherme Lamaner and Adamir da Silva, Ileana Pittman. We had a lot of good stuff, and we had Alejandro Rey was the Carlos from the Flying Nun.
Mm-hmm.
He was down there with us. Kent Lane, Tisha Sterling. It was a great movie, but unfortunately, what happened when the movie came out, it won a bunch of awards, and I was going to be up for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, But the guy had a Hollywood divorce with Rhonda Fleming, and she got half in the judgment. He had to give her half the money from the movie, and he got mad and he shelved it, so he never released the movie.
Are you kidding me?
Yep.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, I was up at the house, and Rhonda and Hall had a horrible divorce. And he was so mad at her that this 11 years he'd worked his life to make this movie. Before he would give her a red cent, he shelved it.
Wow.
We had billboards on Sunset Boulevard and everything. And then I got the trades were for your consideration, Butch Patrick, Best Supporting Actor. And I was going to be a movie star, and it just all went out. And then I wound up doing Lidsville. Nothing against Lidsville, but I went from movie star to Saturday Morning. It was like, I think it's time to get out of the business.
Yeah.
It's
a big letdown. It's a big letdown.
The main thing that did it was I'd worked for 15 years, and I wondered, when do I get to the point where they start mailing me scripts, or at least you don't have to go through the process of the normal cattle call. Well, not a cattle call, but a normal interview process. I was hoping that I might be able to get a little bit ahead of the game, but back then that's not how it worked.
Yeah,
at least
I got you.
Butch, I saw somewhere that you actually hung out with Sally Fields, but she was the Flying Nun.
No. Sally Fields was coming on the set of The Monkees to visit Davy Jones.
Oh,
they were an item, and she would come over, and I thought it was very cute. And it was like when I was at Universal, Sandra Dee and Bobby Darin were they were like the Hollywood couple, and they were always out at Universal. So but no, I never hung out with Sally Field.
Oh, that's still pretty cool. I mean, it's still to be in that circle. I mean, you're talking icons. I mean, that's unbelievable.
I walk down Hollywood Boulevard and I look at the stars sometimes on the pavement, and it's amazing how many of them you've either worked with or have sat down in some event or commissary, and it's amazing how many people cross your paths. When you're in Hollywood, it's not that big of a town.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I got another question for you then. With all that said about the way it's been going, what about there's vicious rumors running around of a remake of the Munsters where I guess Rob Zombie's going to direct it, or is he going to be in it, or are you going to be a part of that?
He's in it. No, he's not in it. He's got the rights to it. He's directing it. That is correct. Not a vicious rumor. It's going to be great. I do know Rob. He and I were hired to do commentary on the new Munster Go Home Blu-ray a couple of years ago. So we sat and chatted. I'd met him 15 years before in Philadelphia at a concert, and great guy. Sherry Moon's awesome. What a great couple. And I am very comfortable that the world is going to be pleasantly surprised at what he presents to the world as a Munster movie. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah. The dude, I met him about 10, 12 years ago. Super cool guy.
Yeah.
We talked for like 10, 15 minutes. Super nice guy, man.
Super talented, super knowledgeable. Big Munsters fan. Loves the Munsters. I was in Connecticut. I took my Munster coach over to his house. We went I let him drive it and went for a cruise through town. Sherry sat in the back. We communicate. I am going to do something in the movie. I can't discuss it, but
right. I get that.
As is Pat Priest. So yeah, I'm very, very happy about it for the next year or so. It's a huge buzz. He's actually, I have a new YouTube channel called All Things Munster. And of course, my first segment when I launch it will be Rob Zombie and the Munster Project.
Right.
And the second one will be George Barris, my life with George, Uncle George, as I would call him. And then the third one is I have a show called Macabre Theater with a co-host called Ivana Cadaver, who's a dear friend of mine. And we've been doing this. This is about a 20-year project that's been on and off. She's had it on the air for the last, I think, 15 years straight, called Macabre Theater, Ivana Cadaver. So that'll be the third segment. So it's going to be All Things Munster because there's such a buzz going on right now about it.
Yeah.
And in a good way.
No, that's cool. Yeah.
Let's talk more about Barris. I was lucky enough to spend, I don't know, it was probably 6 or 7 hours in his shop one day. Did an interview with him, and he was a fantastic storyteller. I mean, he had me laughing so hard on certain subjects. It was just pretty crazy. And he showed me, he had the Wall of Fame where he showed me the cars that he built for people. He told me a cool story about Frank Sinatra. He said Frank Sinatra asked to have his windows tinted way back in the day. It's before film, of course, the tint. He said, Frank said, make it dark, make it real dark. I don't want people to see me in my car. He says, you won't be able to see. He goes, I don't care. I don't care. He says, the next day, Frank Sinatra comes back. He goes, listen, I almost ran into 3 cars. Get this shit off my windows. I can't see. But George told us, I mean, he was so colorful. Every time I turned around, he had me laughing my ass off as to what he was doing.
I told people,
Perfect.
I had George sign off. He gave me the rights to his life story for 2 years. I had a 2-year option. I thought I was skipping out the door when I got that option because I thought there was no way that anybody isn't going to want to make this movie of George Barris's life. And honestly, everybody that I approached thought he was too old. They didn't appreciate it. They did what it was the younger kids in Hollywood that were in the position of power at that time to greenlight a project could care less about George Barris. And I could not convince them how wrong they were. I tried to convince them about car clubs, how strong car clubs are, how organized they are, what a god he is to the car clubs. I go, the man's Rolodex in Hollywood nobody has more connections in Hollywood that can know who George Barris is than anybody. I mean, I would put his Rolodex against anybody of knowing stars.
Oh, yeah.
And they just didn't get it. And it was
it's because they don't see money in it, man. Because when I was doing my first TV show, they the guy that owned the company, he said that Carol Shelby gave him the rights to his life. And I said to him, how come you didn't do the show? And he just said flat out, there's no money in it.
Yeah, they don't know. They don't think there's any. I'll give you an example. I tell people right now when they hire me, Munsters, and they go, well, I don't know if the kids are going to know who the Munsters are. The first personal appearance I ever did when I bought my cars was Daytona Dodge. Randy died, great guy, ex-NASCAR driver. And a friend of mine, Brian Ryder, set up the deal, and he hired me to come down. And when I got there, he goes, I got to tell you, I didn't think the kids were going to know who you were, but you know what I did? I walked through my entire complex, and he had a big complex, and every person I asked, whether they were a mechanic or a secretary or a car washer, whatever they were doing, do you know who the Munsters are? He goes, every person knew who the Munsters were. So I tell people, I go, you may not, you're gonna be pleasantly surprised because you're very much underestimating the power and the brand identification, the brand knowledge of the word the Munsters. People are it's a very unusual situation, very unique, but the world knows who this is, and that's why I tell people, I go, if I wanted to go out and just go on the road for the rest of my life and just do car shows, I would never, ever run out of meeting people and sell them. The T-shirt you got, I could sell 1 million of those. Literally.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's a cool shirt. I mean, everybody saw this cool shit.
I will never run out of a Munster fan base to go out and meet people because it makes them feel good. The adults like watching it with their kids and their grandkids and their grandparents and the hot rods. But in the hot rod circle, I'm like an A-lister, and the rest of the world, I'm a B- lister. But in the hot rod world, the Munster coach and me, we're A-listers. So stay where you're strong. Stay in the automotive world. I like it.
Yeah.
Dead Man's Curve, a perfect example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a nice show. Brian and I should have showed up on Saturday, but
I'm
we heard it was
of the
big.
best car club in the world, and they made me a member, and they hired me to come out, and they've had, anybody has been there, and now I'm a member of this club, and I'm telling you, hot rods are a very strong group of guys, and they love what they do, And the Munsters is a big draw, and they like it, and I like my cars, so I'm very comfortable doing what I do. I've carved out a very cool little niche for myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lois was plugging the website or the Facebook page. You want to run through that, Butch? Because I think we skipped over it.
The Facebook
what's
page?
the Facebook page? What's it called?
Well, I've got Butch Patrick and Butch Patrick too, but the main thing is you go to Munsters.com. I've had that almost 30 years, and everything that I have, everything that I'm doing, the schedule, the store, the merch, the Rob Zombie stuff, everything can be found at Munsters.com. It's the easiest way to do it because it's easiest to remember.
Right.
And,
that makes sense.
We got the Instagram and we got Twitter and all that stuff. But I'm not really a big social media person at that level. I have some people to do it. Like I say, Lois runs the thing. Howard Stern loves the Munsters. John Five, Rob Zombie, Paul McCartney. I mean, he count me front row center tickets. It's like it's got this draw of people that Alice Cooper's a big fan. He actually invited me. He goes, "When are you going to come up on stage with me?" And I go, "Really?" And I go, "I'm holding you to it." I go, "This is I saw you when I was 19 years old, and I'm coming back and I'm coming up on stage, Mr. Cooper."
I've seen him at Barrett Jackson out at Scottsdale.
Oh, great guy. One of my
he's a car guy. Yeah, he's a car guy too.
Yep.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm very lucky. I've been very blessed. It's been a great ride. People come up to me and say, "You ever get tired of doing it?" I go, no, I don't. And I go, you know why? Because in this day and age, if you can bring some joy to some people by answering a couple questions and posing for a picture and sharing these memories of how much the show meant to these people and how you were part of their extended family when things were tough, how can you not? I mean, the one of the best stories I ever had was I went into a radio station in Florida, and the girl at the receptionist, cute little girl too. She goes, "I got to tell you, Mr. Patrick, you were my imaginary friend when I was a kid. I had a really bad depression, and whenever I got really, really depressed, I would go watch the Munsters by myself, and it would bring me out of my depression." I mean,
wow.
So how do you?
Dude, that's huge.
How do you not feel good about that?
Yeah.
2 years of my life, 57 years ago, and people are still gathering information. The little thing where. The statement where I had a beard and it gets dissolved, and Herman gives the little talk about, did you learn anything? It's it's not what you look like, it's the strength of your heart, the size of your character and the strength of your heart. That thing gets 100 million views about every few months because it resonates perfectly into the world we live in today.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah, it's a life lesson. You know what I mean? It's just that simple. It's a life lesson. Yeah.
What happened to Woof Woof? Where's what you still got Woof Woof?
Number one asked question of all time. Where's Woof Woof? He's in Indiana, but before he wound up in Indiana, I made a mold of him, and we sold about 120 of them back in the 80s to collectors. And I've got two of them. I've got Son of Woof Woof, and then I've got another version of Woof Woof that we're currently selling at Munsters.com.
Wow.
I have to get a Woof Woof. I got a couple granddaughters. I'm gonna have to get a couple of them.
Probably not cheap. Only 120. Probably not cheap if you can find one.
No, they're kind of pricey, but you can find them on eBay. I've seen them double in price, and I've seen them 25% of what we sold them for. So if you look around, and there's a lot of other ones too, you'll find a Woof Woof at an affordable price.
Yeah,
Butch,
guys, I know that we said something. I'm pretty much over my time here.
I got you. Yeah, I wanted to thank you. I appreciate it. Anything else you want to talk about before you run out? Where you're going? Where you're going to be?
Well, it's the best thing to do is just go to Munsters.com for the schedule. But yeah, I can tell you real quickly. I'm going to be at Horror Hound this weekend in Cincinnati, and then I'll be down in Tennessee at the Smokey and the Bandit Run, leading up to the weekend after that in Springfield, Illinois, at the Route 66 Mother Road Car Show. It's going to be a big one. And then after that, it's Detroit, Indianapolis, Myrtle Beach, New Orleans, and Denver for the month of October.
All cool.
Yeah.
Butch, we appreciate you coming on. It was fantastic. You're a piece of history. Write the book. I'll be first in line to get it.
I will do that book thing, I think. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Talk
Butch.
to you later.
Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dude, that was awesome. That was awesome. I'm so jazzed about this.
That's history right there.
So jazzed.
That's history.
Yeah,
Can you imagine?
it's good history. And the thing is, he's a car guy. That's what makes it so awesome.
He's got to log it. He's got to write. He's got to put that on paper and put it out there so people can read.
Yeah.
Because when he talks about 1969, you forget. You're like, okay, I know what happened this week, but you don't know. You don't remember what Manson, the man on the moon, Kennedy. Almost felt like it was a Forrest Gump running through history there of being at the right place, right time.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. Lois, there's Lois.
Yeah, she's got she posted she's got a woof woof.
Follow the page. Next week we got Faye. Faye, you want to talk about Faye?
Yes, Faye. She's doing All Girls Garage, but it's like 3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks old. Motor Mythbusters on Disco. So she's doing that. So she's hosting 2 shows. Super, super nice lady. Super nice lady. I met Faye once in Detroit at Roadkill Nights 3 years ago, and she was just a nice person, man. She's cool. I like her. I really do like her. And I think she's out of Texas, but she does she's got some deal where she helps vets fix their cars and stuff. Well, we'll get into that. I don't know all the details on that, but I know she does that, and she does a bunch of stuff. She's really cool. Yeah, she's really cool.
Before we jet, I wanted to thank Brian. I know Brian's still on. Brian Ryder. He's the one that put all this together. He's Butch's buddy.
Yeah.
So he's the one that got us Butch on the show, which is cool. It's Ryder Graphics. Check it out if you don't know already. That's his company.
That's cool. Yeah.
A week after Faye, we got Will Lockwood from Bitch and Rides coming on. Right now, Tori, he sent me a text trying to lock down Paul Sr. for the 29th, the week after, but he said he's tied up doing a 9/11 event in New York.
Yeah.
So it's hit and miss as far as, him getting back.
Yeah.
But we'll get him. If it's not that week, we'll get him after. So 29th right now is still open. I tried to hit
and we got I did a group text with everybody, so we might have a guy like a master gunsmith, and we'll talk about some cool stuff, Second Amendment stuff, building guns in today's world. I think it'd be pretty cool. So I think you guys, for you guys who are into weapons, I think it'd be a really good show.
Too short. It's an hour. We had an hour here, Rod.
He wanted to turn it in. Butch said he wanted to do a half hour, and we kept him going. So
he told a good story too.
He did. It was awesome.
Yeah, it is cool. All right, I'm gonna jet because I gotta kill this. Wait,
all right,
a little bit here. I'm gonna.
All right, so I'm gonna close it. Shut up for a second. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. Butch, it was great to have you on. Real car guy. It's a shame we didn't get to talk more about cars. I really wanted to. But hey, John was running this one. He's trying to keep me between the lines. Hope you have a good time. Next week, we've got Faye. She is one of the hosts of All Girls Garage and the new show on Discovery, Motor Mythbusters. So she's out there. She's really cool. You'll see her next week. Everybody have a great time. I'm Lou, and I'm out. Later.